I'm Terry Kolath. I'm here today with Seth Mendel of Teledora. We're speaking about his next history presentation for us, this one in the spring semester. We're going to start right out with Visit 6 Russian Cities. Thank you for joining me, Seth.
Well, it's nice to be here this morning.
Seth, I love how you have shown us the czars of Russia. Now we're going to be able to take a really detailed look at where it all happened, aren't we?
That's right. And just a little history on this program is that this show actually is about 40 years old. But of course, we're talking history here and historic buildings, and
right.
So that hasn't changed at all. But back in 1977, the school where I taught, Avon Old Farm School, gave me a sabbatical in the summer to go to Russia. So Alice and I did. So that's when I took all of these slides, and with the idea that I'd use them in my course of Russian history that I was teaching to the boys. So that basically now it's a PowerPoint presentation. But we start right off with the oldest city in Russia, one of the oldest, let's say, Kiev. And we look at such things as the Golden Gate, because Kiev sits astride the Dnieper River that flowed to the south, the Black Sea and the Byzantine Empire, and up north to the Scandinavian countries. So it was a main artery. And so it was a very wealthy city. And we look at the Cathedral of St. Sophia in Kiev, which is interesting because whereas the cathedrals in Europe built high, the cathedrals at this time in Russia, early Russia, were spread out with different small cathedrals with cupola towers. Okay. And the reason I'm laboring this point is inside those cupola towers was their artwork of religious relief and that sort of thing.
Could everyone see it?
And I will have some pictures of that.
Right. Could people at the time go into?
Yes, yes, functioning, and the size of the cathedral, like St. Sophia's, was determined by the number of cupolas, and St. Sophia in Kiev had 14. Anyway, so we take a good look, in-depth look at Kiev, and then we move on to Moscow, because that is the natural progression. And we see a big statue of Yuri Dvorak, because he's the one that founded Russia in 1147, not Russia, Moscow, in 1147. And then we, of course, move right up into Red Square and the Kremlin and the Kremlin walls. And of course, down at the end of Red Square is that fantastic cathedral of St. Basil, the Blessed St. Basil the Blind. It was built by Ivan the Terrible back in 1555. And it's a magnificent building, and I have quite a lot of shots of that because it is definitely a four-sided building. I mean, every one is the front, so to speak. Right. And then we follow on to St. Petersburg after we leave Moscow. And of course, St. Petersburg was founded by Peter the Great, who was the third of the Romanov dynasties. We left the Ivans in Moscow, and now we're with the Romanovs in St. Petersburg. And St. Petersburg is a photographer's dream. There are more palaces, and more to see in terms of the visual appreciation. Because it was the window to the west. And it's also referred to as the Venice of Russia, because of all its canals. And it was built, well, much like our mangrove, I won't call them swamps around here, but they pumped up the land and built the buildings. And they built them on piles, the same as these buildings. I remember Peter Dias telling us one time in his history talks that these buildings here, like the Sundial and Harbor Court, and I imagine the Woodlands, are all on piles.
They came up out of the water.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, anyway, so we look at of course, the Hermitage, the great palace. After, of course, Peter built the city, moved the capital from Moscow to St. Petersburg, and what was it, 1709. Started in 1703, moved it up there in 1709. Then we really change gears, and we take a long flight from St. Petersburg down to Volgograd, or Stalingrad. Most of us know it as Stalingrad because that was named Stalingrad during World War II after their leader. And that was an industrial city. There were no great glittering palaces, that sort of thing. And of course, if you know World War II history, that was the battle that stopped the Germans in Russia.
Which we know thanks to you.
Yes, yes. And what stands out in my mind, well, first let's say that the Volga River, where Stalingrad, Volgograd is referred to as the main street of Russia. I mean, it really curves all the way up through Russia, north of Moscow. And you can come all the way down, and of course it flows into the Caspian Sea, which is a landlocked sea. But they've built a canal that connects it down below Stalingrad, that connects it to the Don River. It flows into the Black Sea, and then from the Black Sea you can go through the Bosphorus Straits and through the Dardanelles and through the Aegean Sea and out into the Mediterranean.
Perfect for commerce.
Perfect for commerce, although you've got the Suez Canal on one end and the Straits of Gibraltar on the other. But that's the whole story of Russia, is this landlocked country. The thing that stands out about Stalingrad is its tremendous war memorial, since it was the pivotal point when von Paulus surrendered his German Sixth Army to the Russians. And they have built, on the scale of our Statue of Liberty, a tremendous figure of Mother Russia, with a sword raised to chase out the invader. The promenade to get to that is a mile long. And they have facades all the way up and stands of trees and reflection ponds, and you go and go and go and go and go. And I can't talk about it without pictures.
Good.
It's
We'll
just
see them.
too much.
Sure, we'll see
So you're going to see them.
Is that our final city?
Well, there were two more, very quick. We went to Tbilisi, which is the capital of Georgia.
Okay.
And at the time, of course, it was under the control of the Soviet Union. And whereas the Russian cities were clean, this was dingy. It was a mining city, town. It's where Stalin grew up, as a matter of fact. That was interesting to see, and it's old country. We're talking 4th century remains of churches and forts and fortifications. And then our last was an eye-opener. We went to Sochi, and Sochi is a vacation spot on the Black Sea.
The Olympics, right?
Sochi, yes, you're right. Yeah, and we didn't expect to see that. I mean, I'd always heard about Yalta, and that being the winter playground for the czars and their palaces there. But Sochi, unbelievable, resort hotel type, beaches, tons of tourists, Russians, right, and the beautiful Black Sea water.
Now, this is very different for you, Seth. You have taken us through World War I, World War II, between the wars, so much history, whaling, all verbally. We've listened to you. Now we're all going to focus on the photographs you took when you were there on sabbatical. This is going to be very rich.
Well, I look forward to doing it, and of course, as you can tell from listening to me, I enjoy it.
And we're going to enjoy it right along with you. I hope you'll make every opportunity to join Seth Mendel on Monday, January 7th, as he presents, well, actually, as he takes us on a visit to 6 Russian cities.